You think attraction is about looks? Better clothes, better photos, better lines. But the truth is, most people become unattractive long before their appearance even matters. They destroy attraction with weak communication, emotional desperation, and the inability to control their energy when they speak. That's why somebody can walk into a room looking average and still command attention while another person looks perfect on paper and gets ignored the moment they open their mouth. Because attraction is not just visual, it's psychological. And the way you communicate tells people everything about your emotional state before you ever explain yourself. Before we go deeper, understand this. If you're serious about becoming mentally sharper, emotionally stronger, and impossible to manipulate through validation addiction, subscribe now. Not because I need subscribers, because you need reminders, daily reminders. In a world teaching people to perform constantly for approval, somebody has to remind you that real attractiveness begins with self-respect, emotional control, and grounded communication. Here's what this really means. Communication is not just words, it's emotional transmission. Your tone, your timing, your silence, your pacing, your attention, your restraint. People are not only reacting to what you say, they are reacting to the emotional condition behind what you say. That's the part most people miss. They obsess over scripts instead of energy, techniques instead of presence, lines instead of identity. And that's why they fail. Because attractive communication is not about manipulation. It's about congruence. When your words, emotions, boundaries, and self-respect align together, people feel stability in you. That stability becomes magnetic. Now let's destroy the biggest lie first. Most people think talking more makes them more attractive. Wrong. Overtalking usually signals nervousness. Oversharing usually signals emotional hunger. Constant explaining usually signals insecurity. And people feel that immediately. Not consciously all the time. Psychologically. Because communication always reveals emotional position. When you constantly seek reassurance, your communication becomes needy. When you fear silence, your communication becomes noisy. When you fear rejection, your communication becomes performative. That's called approval-seeking behavior. And approval-seeking kills attraction faster than rejection ever could. Read that again. The fear of rejection makes people unattractive long before rejection itself happens. Why? Because fear changes behavior. You text too much. You laugh too hard. You over-explain simple things. You apologize for your opinions. You try to be liked by everyone in the room. That energy communicates weakness. Not because kindness is weak, because emotional dependence is weak. There's a difference. A grounded person communicates from self-respect. An insecure person communicates for validation. One creates attraction. The other creates emotional exhaustion. And this problem is getting worse because modern communication has destroyed patience. Everybody reacts instantly, texts instantly, attaches instantly, overshares instantly. No emotional discipline, no composure, no restraint. Then people wonder why their conversations feel shallow and forgettable. Because attraction grows in emotional depth, not emotional flooding. The most attractive communicators are rarely the loudest people in the room. They are usually the calmest, the people who do not rush their words. Do not panic in silence. Do not interrupt constantly to prove value. Do not force attention. That calmness signals confidence. And confidence is not loud. Insecurity is loud. Confidence is grounded. Now understand this carefully. Better communication is not about becoming more charismatic overnight. It's about removing the behaviors that make you emotionally heavy to be around. That's the shift. Because emotionally heavy people drain rooms without realizing it. They constantly complain, constantly seek reassurance, constantly redirect conversations back to themselves, constantly try to impress people. That behavior creates pressure, and pressure destroys attraction. People do not enjoy feeling emotionally responsible for somebody else's self-worth. That's why desperation repels. Not because people are cruel. Because emotional neediness feels unstable. And human psychology naturally moves away from instability. So if you want to become more attractive through communication, the first thing you need to learn is emotional regulation. Not suppression. Regulation. Suppression buries emotion. Regulation directs it. There's a difference. Emotionally regulated people speak with clarity because they are not drowning inside their own reactions. They pause before responding. They listen without immediately defending themselves. They stay calm during tension. They don't emotionally collapse the moment conversations become uncomfortable. That emotional steadiness creates trust. And trust creates attraction far more deeply than surface-level charm ever will. Now let's go deeper into why most communication fails. People communicate to control perception instead of express truth. Think about that. They want to appear impressive, appear confident, appear desirable. So every interaction becomes performance. Performance is exhausting because when you perform constantly, you stop connecting authentically. You stop listening. You stop observing. You stop being present. Everything becomes strategy. And ironically, that desperation to appear attractive makes you less attractive. Because people can feel forced energy, especially emotionally intelligent people. Now, does that mean you should say whatever comes to mind with no awareness? No, that's not authenticity. That's lack of discipline. Real communication strength comes from controlled honesty, the ability to express yourself clearly without emotional chaos controlling your delivery. That's maturity. And maturity is attractive, very attractive, because most adults still communicate like emotionally reactive teenagers. Passive aggressive behavior, mixed signals, attention games, silent treatment, indirect communication. That behavior destroys trust. Strong communicators say what they mean calmly, not aggressively, not manipulatively, clearly, and clarity creates emotional safety. Not safe in the weak sense, safe in the grounded sense. The kind where people know where they stand with you because your communication is consistent. That's rare now. Very rare. Most people speak emotionally instead of intentionally, meaning their mood controls their communication style. If they feel insecure, they become clingy. If they feel rejected, they become distant. If they feel anxious, they overtext. If they feel ignored, they create emotional drama. That's emotional instability, and unstable communication creates unstable relationships. This is why emotional discipline matters so much. The ability to feel emotion without becoming controlled by it changes your entire presence. You stop reacting impulsively. You stop chasing instant reassurance. You stop turning every silence into panic. And suddenly your communication becomes calmer, sharper, more grounded, more attractive. Now here's another hard truth. Most people are terrible listeners. Not because they can't hear words, because they are too focused on themselves. They listen to respond, listen to impress, listen to redirect attention. But attractive communicators listen to understand. Huge difference. When somebody feels understood around you, they naturally feel emotionally drawn toward you. Why? Because attention is intimacy, real attention, not performative attention, present attention. The ability to fully engage with another human being without constantly trying to prove yourself. That quality is becoming extremely rare because distraction has become normal. Everybody is half listening while mentally preparing their next sentence, half present while checking notifications, half engaged while thinking about how they appear. That fractured attention weakens connection. Strong communicators simplify their focus. One conversation, one moment, one person. Presence. That's attractive. Now let's talk about silence because insecure people fear silence more than almost anything. The moment conversations slow down, they panic. So they fill every gap with unnecessary words, jokes, rambling, oversharing, explaining. But silence is not automatically awkward. Insecurity makes it awkward. Confident people understand that silence can create emotional depth when it's comfortable. Why? Because silence reveals emotional stability. If you cannot sit calmly in silence, you usually cannot sit calmly with yourself either. That's the deeper issue. Many people talk constantly because they are uncomfortable with their own internal world. So communication becomes distraction. But grounded individuals are not afraid of pauses. They think before speaking. They let conversations breathe. They don't force energy. And that restraint creates weight behind their words. When somebody rarely speaks unnecessarily, people pay attention when they do speak. That's power. Quiet power. Now let's destroy another misconception. Being attractive does not mean becoming agreeable. A lot of people confuse niceness with attractiveness. Wrong. Attractive communication requires boundaries. Without boundaries, communication loses respect. If you constantly tolerate disrespect to avoid conflict, people stop valuing your presence. Because self-respect teaches people how to treat you. And communication is where self-respect becomes visible. The person who says, "I'm not okay with that," calmly is more attractive than the person who silently accepts mistreatment just to keep approval. Why? Because boundaries communicate emotional stability. They say, "I value myself enough to protect my peace." That energy changes interactions immediately. Now notice something important. Healthy boundaries are calm, not dramatic. Weak people think boundaries require aggression. Strong people understand boundaries require clarity. There's a difference. Aggression seeks domination. Clarity seeks respect. And respect is essential for attraction. No respect, no real attraction. Only temporary emotional stimulation. Now here's where communication becomes transformative. The attractive person does not chase attention in conversations. They create emotional experience. That's different. Anybody can talk. Very few people know how to make others feel calm, understood, energized, respected, and emotionally safe at the same time. That's communication mastery. And it starts internally because your words cannot consistently outperform your identity. Eventually, your emotional state leaks through your behavior. If you are insecure internally, it appears externally. If you are resentful internally, it appears externally. If you are desperate internally, it appears externally. That's why surface level communication tricks fail long term. The real work is internal. You build confidence through discipline. You build calmness through emotional control. You build clarity through self-awareness. Then your communication changes naturally. Now let's talk about the archetype. The grounded man does not enter conversations trying to win approval. He enters with presence. He listens carefully, speaks intentionally, maintains eye contact without forcing intensity, uses silence comfortably, does not overreact emotionally, does not gossip constantly, does not seek validation through performance. There's steadiness in him. His life has structure outside social approval. He trains his body, protects his attention, builds his purpose, keeps his word. That discipline enters his communication automatically. People feel reliability in him. And reliability is attractive because modern communication is flooded with emotional inconsistency. One day people are obsessed with you. Next day they disappear. One moment they promise loyalty. Next moment they ghost. Chaos everywhere. So when somebody communicates with calm consistency, they stand out immediately. Not because they're flashy, because they're stable. Stability is underrated now. Massively underrated. Especially emotionally. Now listen carefully because this changes everything. Attractive communication is less about trying to be interesting and more about being interested. Most people are obsessed with being perceived as valuable, but grounded people focus on understanding reality. That mindset shift removes desperation from your interactions. You stop performing constantly. You stop needing every conversation to prove your worth. You stop forcing chemistry. Instead, you observe. You engage. You stay present. That relaxed presence creates attraction naturally, because people feel emotionally free around you instead of emotionally managed. Now let's get practical. If you want to become more attractive through communication, stop reacting instantly. Pause, especially emotionally charged situations. The person who controls their reaction controls the direction of the conversation. That's emotional leadership. Then stop over-explaining yourself. Confident people clarify when necessary. Insecure people constantly defend themselves preemptively. Big difference. If somebody misunderstands you occasionally, survive it. You do not need universal approval. Next, stop speaking from emotional panic. Do not send paragraphs because somebody replied late. Do not create drama because you feel uncertain. Do not emotionally unload on people who never asked to carry your instability. Regulate first. Communicate second. That one habit alone will transform your relationships. Then improve your listening. Not fake listening. Real listening. Focus completely. Notice patterns. Ask thoughtful questions. Remember details naturally instead of forcing charm. People feel deeply valued when they feel genuinely heard, and genuine attention is rare now. Next, become comfortable with silence. Practice it. Do not rush to fill every pause. Do not treat quiet moments like danger. Calm silence communicates confidence far more than nervous talking ever will. Then strengthen your boundaries. Stop laughing at disrespect just to avoid tension. Stop tolerating emotional games. Stop abandoning your standards because you fear losing somebody. Boundaries increase attraction because they communicate self-worth, and self-worth is magnetic. Now here's another truth most people avoid. Your communication style reflects your lifestyle. If your life lacks structure, your communication becomes emotionally chaotic. No mission, no discipline, no purpose. So your emotional energy starts depending entirely on social interactions. That's dangerous, because then every text controls your mood. Every conversation controls your confidence. Every rejection controls your identity. That's weakness. Grounded individuals build lives they respect outside relationships. And because they already have direction, their communication becomes lighter, less needy, less controlling, less emotionally dependent. That freedom becomes attractive. Not fake detachment. Freedom. There's a difference. Fake detachment says, I don't care. Freedom says, I care without losing myself. That is emotional strength. And emotional strength changes everything. You stop trying to impress everyone. You stop fearing disagreement. You stop shrinking yourself for acceptance. You communicate honestly without emotional aggression. That balance is rare. Very rare. Now understand this deeply. The most attractive people are usually the ones least obsessed with appearing attractive. Why? Because they are focused on substance instead of performance. They build themselves, discipline themselves, challenge themselves, and that internal confidence naturally shapes how they communicate. No forcing, no pretending, just grounded presence. That's why authenticity becomes powerful only when combined with self awareness. Without self awareness, authenticity can become selfishness. Without discipline, honesty can become cruelty. Balanced communication requires emotional maturity, and emotional maturity requires work. Real work, not motivational quotes, not fake alpha performances, not manipulative techniques. Inner work, learning emotional control, learning patience, learning clarity, learning self respect. That process transforms your communication from reactive to intentional. And intentional communication creates stronger attraction than surface level charm ever could. Now think about the people you naturally trust most. Usually they are calm communicators, clear communicators, consistent communicators. Not the loudest, not the flashiest, the most grounded. Because grounded energy makes people feel emotionally safe. Again, not weak safe, stable safe. There's a difference. People relax around emotionally stable individuals because they know every conversation will not become emotional warfare. That emotional predictability creates comfort. And comfort builds deep attraction over time, not instant obsession. Real connection, which is far more valuable. Now here's the final shift. Stop using communication to seek value. Start using communication to express value. Completely different energy. When you seek value, every interaction becomes emotional survival. When you express value, conversations become extensions of who you already are. That changes your tone, your pacing, your confidence, your boundaries, everything. You stop trying to convince people to like you. You start letting your character speak through consistency. That's real attractiveness, not perfection, not performance, congruence. The alignment between your words, standards, actions, and emotional state. And once you develop that alignment, people feel it immediately. You become calmer, sharper, harder to manipulate, more emotionally respected. Not because you became colder, because you became grounded. That's the identity shift. You are not here to beg for attention through endless talking. You are not here to sacrifice your self-respect for temporary validation. You are not here to perform constantly just to feel wanted. You are here to build yourself into somebody whose communication naturally carries weight. Through discipline, through emotional control, through clarity, through self-respect. You stop chasing reactions. You stop forcing conversations. You stop fearing silence. And ironically, that's when your presence becomes unforgettable. Because grounded communication is rare now. Most people bring emotional chaos into every interaction. You bring calmness, intentionality, respect, clarity. That stands out immediately. And once you understand that, you stop obsessing over attraction techniques. You focus on becoming emotionally stronger instead. Because stronger people communicate better naturally. Not perfectly. Powerfully. You are the answer. Not a script. Not a pickup line. Not somebody else's approval. You, your mindset, your emotional discipline, your standards, your ability to communicate without abandoning yourself. That's real attractiveness. And once you build that internally, your external presence changes automatically. So if this gave you clarity, subscribe now and stay connected to this community. A community built on truth over performance, self-respect over validation addiction, and emotional strength over emotional chaos. Because the world already has enough noise. What you need now is groundedness, discipline, and the courage to communicate like somebody who already respects themselves.